This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. And before we came online today, we were talking about today's subject. And today's subject is about aligning we're talking about aligning ourselves, because last time we talked about connecting to our value. And I did a little cheating this morning. I went out and I listened to the individual that she is going to be talking about with this process. And I will tell you, Candace, I think sometimes we just have to shut off our brains and listen to somebody else's wisdom. So tell us how we're going to do this today.
Well, the information we're going to discuss today is based on ideas presented in the book, The Illusion of Money. And it was written by Kyle Cease, like C-E-A-S-E, Cease and Desist. And he was a comedian early in his career. And then ultimately he started to evolve and become a personal development guru, coach, and so on. And he's really got some interesting takes on things that I think we can all benefit from. So the last time we talked about connecting to your value, and the whole idea in that was that we spend a lot of time focusing on external things to gratify ourselves and sometimes acquire things that we think are going to be valuable to us. But his approach is to look internally and see what's going on where we have real security, true security, confidence, and so on. And since we're approaching the season for reaping the rewards of the things we have sown, maybe some of our activities and habits, etc., I just thought it would be appropriate to start leaning into this topic.
Okay, I think so too.
All right. So the questions we can be asking is going into this season, what are we going to reap? What did we plant? Actually start there. And then how intentional were we with that planting? And so aligning is having that practicing curiosity, not judgment, but curiosity around what were we planting? And then how going into the future, how will we do that? So Cease talks about we all have equal amounts of time. Every human has equal amounts of time, and we can't dispute that. But how we spend it is what is going to determine what we reap, and how we spend it also determines whether it changes us towards what we seek and where we want more value and security, or it undermines that. And he basically tells us that we can, regardless of the amount of external abundance we have, we'll never have true security unless we have that inner sense of value and confidence and security. So anyway, any thoughts about that so far?
Well, it's interesting because everything just clicked. I'm watching a series on Netflix. And interestingly enough, it's about individuals in a law practice striving to become the partners in the law firm, and watching their struggles. It's like this brass ring that they want to get, but what are they giving up to get it? And as I'm watching the Netflix, I'm thinking about myself. Sometimes we bury ourselves in work just trying to either be noticed or get to that next level. And we walk around with blinders on for everything else. And then we might get it, but then are we really satisfied? Because look at all the things that we may have missed along the line.
Yeah, and we all probably have firsthand experience with that, but also secondhand experience, noticing other people who have achieved great heights and so on, but they're either hollow inside, or it's been at the expense of relationships and so on.
Right.
And so Cease is talking about spending time and growing your inner value will give you that inner security, and it'll be more personally satisfying. So it won't be all of that external stuff that may, the competitive part, the, being the top dog and so on, because that's only as secure as your last movie, so to speak. You're only
Right.
your last,
Exactly. Yep.
constantly have to strive. And Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach, talks about the gap. So we tend to measure our success or failure based on how far we are from our goal. But the trick is, it's kind of like a mirage. Even if we reach our goal, we have another one right behind it. So it's always out of our grasp, and we're always feeling less than, or there's a gap that we're never quite closing, when we should measure ourselves from where we started and then decide where we are now, and then at least give ourselves a pat on the back in terms of having actually accomplished something.
Yes. Agree.
So the idea of growing your inner value to give yourself inner security, it means tapping into things more personally satisfying, that are more likely to fuel our creativity, our passion, and just be more fulfilling. So we talked about that in connecting to your value, that, what are the kinds of things that we spend our time on, kind of like spending our dollars. Well, these are our time dollars and our focus dollars. And what are the things that zap us in terms of confidence, creativity, and a sense of fulfillment? And what are the things that fuel us? So what are the things that pop into your mind most that zap you?
Well, when I think about my past, it wasn't, I thought certain things were fulfilling me. And so I kept going for them. Um, it's only probably within the last 5 to 10 years that I realized that um, those weren't fulfilling. They were more about maybe fulfilling the needs of other people around me. You know, bragging rights for my parents, or uh, something that I would do that maybe one of my brothers wouldn't think, that they would think more highly of me. Um, and when I started realizing that it was hurting me more than what I was gaining, um, it's, you know, there are days now that if something just doesn't feel good enough to do, um, as long as it's not going to harm anybody, I just don't do it. Um, and sometimes I can figure out a better way of doing it where it is fulfilling to me. Um, and I don't think we give ourselves enough of the chance to, determine how we can do things that, you know, will satisfy us. And I've learned satisfaction is not always in the almighty dollar or that shiny object that, we think we need.
Exactly. And the idea that our society is increasingly structured to, acquire physical things, the consumer mindset, and that competitive part in terms of other people might get ahead. I call it the SUV mentality, when SUVs were like the big deal, that, there was more aggression, at least my perception, on highways, and, me first, and I'm not going to let somebody else get ahead of me. And we can see that in school, we can see that in business, and sometimes even in our personal lives in terms of children getting into certain schools and so on. Look at the scandal regarding the college.
Right.
What's up with that?
Yeah.
But, the point is that maybe that produced an external thing of value, at least in the minds of the parents, if not the children. But did it really make that individual, the parents and or the children, have that sense of personal security and fulfillment? And I think I mentioned the quote last time about the bird doesn't fear the bough breaking because it knows how to fly. And
Right.
to me, just, shouts the essence of what Cease is talking about here. So the idea is, turning inward to find the things that fuel your experience, and you follow your intuition and develop confidence and self-connection is what's really going to help us tap into our real power. And it sounds a little esoteric, but the exercise he gave was to, and I'm repeating myself a bit from the last time, but you basically pay attention to the kinds of things you're spending your time and attention on. So it isn't just, you might be at work, but spending your mind on other things. And then you sit down at some point and rate them on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 meaning not at all satisfying or fulfilling, and 10 being primo satisfying and fulfilling. And you can do this easily. You don't have to sit down and try and think of everything. I just do exercises like this by keeping little sticky notes. And then just as a thought occurs to me, oh yeah, this is something I don't like doing. I'll put it on a sticky note and then stick that on the back of a door or something until the end of the week. And then lo and behold, I have this wonderful list. So the idea is to do that. And then if you're using sticky notes, you can sort them according to rating. First rate them and then sort them according to rating. And then the whole idea is to take the low numbers, or 1 or 2 at a time, and either improve it, I call it better it, barter it, get somebody else to do it, maybe in exchange for doing something that you find fulfilling, preferably. I mean, we don't want to take somebody else's dump thing, or you can bump it. All right, so better it, barter it, or bump it. And it's pretty amazing to me how many things can be bumped. I mean, that was pretty shocking. And I kind of liken it to the kitchen drawer. I mean, mine's in my kitchen, but the junk drawer where everything,
Right.
we accumulate a lot of things like, what am I doing with this stuff in this drawer? But that can represent our lives as well. And so if we eliminated, let's say we had a list of 100 items, from 0 to 10, and we eliminated, I don't know, 15% of the low items, or of the items that were all low value, what would that do?
We give us um, more space, more a chance maybe to um, you know clean things out and um, reassess.
And what would that do?
Um, Number one, it may take some of the burden off of us. Um, in fact, I went through something very similar to this when Alex was moving out. Um, I thought, he's moving out for the first time. He doesn't need all new things. I have doubles and triples of things in my kitchen. And I opened up a drawer where I had multiples of knives and serving spoons and stuff. And when I took out this stuff for him, I also took out stuff to give to Goodwill because he didn't need all the extras. I certainly didn't. And um, all of a sudden, I looked at something and realized that I can use what I have in here. And that was a feeling of satisfaction because I think I was throwing more things in there than taking them out previously to use them. And now I saw a purpose for what I had in that drawer.
Yeah, and I think it perfectly illustrates the idea that we accumulate these things because we're living in a time of excess, acquiring, and for me personally, it's like activities and self-development programs. As much as I've cut back on doing that, I still do a lot of it. And maybe I'm only drowning in 5 feet of water, not 10 feet of water. But the point is that um, the question I always like to ask is to what end? But if we can have the time to pay attention, then we can start noticing these things. But if we're constantly caught up in acquiring items, they go into a drawer because that's where the excess goes, then we don't tend to look at them or have an opportunity to look at them until something like this arises. Or with me, if I'm busy, racing from one thing to the next, I don't have time to stand back and look at the big picture saying, wait a minute, this is getting a little out of hand. There's very little personal time just to think, much less do. So, anything in particular that you know immediately when you get off the call that you might do?
Um, Not exactly, although um, one of the things that I'm hearing in this scenario that you and I are talking about is that for so long, I always felt like I had to be involved or busy in something. If not, um, I labeled myself a failure, a slacker. You know, I saw that there must be something wrong with me because I would look out and see what everybody else appeared to be doing. Um, and one example is um, last week, you told me about this training session that you were or seminar that you were doing all weekend. And part of me was like, wow, she's really busy. And, how could I fit that into my schedule? And then I thought, wait a second, like we're on different paths. That's okay, Karen. But I was reverting back to the way I used to think. I have to have all these things going on myself. And I'm slowly taking out a lot of those things, especially the ones that are uncomfortable for me, um, and maybe not needed.
Yeah, and there was a phrase a friend shared with me that was, if it's not a complete yes, it's a no. And that was so hard for me because everything had been a yes for me. And, I'm not sharing these things on the podcast because I'm not working on things. I mean, I'm constantly working on things. I'm constantly trying to shave off, this little thing or that little thing. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to have to do research in this one setting where there would be lots of desks or tables, and everybody would sit kind of like a library. And people would come down, and you could hear them chatting and stuff. It was a library where they allowed you to talk. And there used to be this other person who would come down and talk about what she was up to. And I was thinking, oh, I need to do that. I need to do that. And then one time I was able to collar myself and say, wait, you're not even interested in that. What is this sense about doing that? I don't know what it was, but maybe keeping up or something. But fortunately, I didn't end up doing it. So in the context of the conversation today, freeing up time and thought space in our brain just to spend more time on the things of higher value to us. So we keep working our way up through that list, and you can add more things as more things show up or occur to you. But eventually the idea is to work your way up so that you have a nice distilled essence of the things that are most likely to give you the most value. And it means saying no to a lot of things, and that can be an alien concept for people like me. And as much as I try to practice those things. So he talks about hoarding your past. It was a really interesting chapter. And that might be things, that might be, regrets, it might be, who knows what. And I just love that phrase because I hadn't thought of being a hoarder. My husband was a keeper. He wasn't a hoarder, but so it meant that there were a lot of things to sort through. But if you hang on to those things from a sense of not enough or need to, you're sabotaging your sense of value and security. So, what occurs to you when I say that?
Wow. I have to have my husband listen to that. So my husband is not a hoarder, but he he keeps so many things. Um, and I think I may have talked about this in another podcast, but um, you know, he'll need a cable and but we've saved hundreds of cables. Um, but we don't know where that cable is, so we order another one. But instead of just ordering another one, he has to order two in case the first one gets misplaced. Um, and I'm always saying, why can't we just go through these things, sort them out, and get rid of them? And he'll sort of agree with me, but it's not important enough to him. And I just sometimes I look around our studio and I think, you know, why do we have all this? But for him, I think it's a comfort level. And I could be wrong, but
Well, and I think the threshold to acquiring the replacement, with the backup replacement is so easy, so low
yeah,
that it makes it hard. It's harder to look for it in the jumble of cables than it is to just order it and have it
exactly.
delivered. And I had a friend years and years ago who was a cyclist. She rode, I don't know what else, probably ran. I can't remember all the things that she did. She was always go, go, go. And she had a cajillion t-shirts, she said. And what she ultimately decided for herself is she could not buy a new t-shirt at the latest event unless she let go of one. And so that meant that she needed to be really precise about which one she preferred. Is she just acquiring the t-shirt as a reminder? Well, she could take a photograph of the t-shirts, or she could take a photograph of the event and keep that. And, a lot of this was before digital was as
Right.
prevalent and so on. But, and if your husband needs any cables, I have a box. But I don't have the ability to know what, some of these may be some like prior centuries technology for
Right.
all I know. So the idea is to, just be curious, just notice. You don't have to do anything. I think that's such an underrated step in the process. Just paying attention initially, just looking around, keep a little sticky notepad with you with one word per sticky note. I use the little 1 by 3 or 2 inches, I guess it is, and for things like this, and just notice, and then start to go through them just a few at a time. Say, what if you didn't do them? Just stop doing it. And then maybe practice that, see what shows up. And it becomes easier and easier. And it's a skill that kind of builds on itself. And then practice curiosity and notice what else may show up in that space. Not another cable, but maybe nothing. Maybe freedom from clutter, or in terms of our thoughts and so on. Maybe thinking more creatively, maybe the opportunity to undertake a hobby and so on. So then finally, what C tells us to do is, when you create that first list, figure out the number of items on the list that you've rated, and then divide them by the score.
Okay.
All right. And that'll give you your alignment average. And the whole idea is that you can see how aligned or not you are to your internal sense of value and security. And then
Interesting.
we can be competitive about our alignment average.
Well, one of the things I'm learning is that I've been competitive with myself. And, when I take that step back and am aware of it, it's a breath of fresh air to be able to say, I don't have to compete on this. And I hope our listeners get that message too, because there are days that I find myself running in circles, accomplishing nothing, because I haven't stopped to think about what I really need to do and what is most important.
Yeah, and I often think about the Maasai warrior on the plains, maybe going back, maybe it's not this way now. Not that I've ever been there, but the idea that do they get caught up in what we do? I mean, it's all a fiction.
Right.
And who's to say we need to have X, Y, or Z except us? I mean, yes, we have some duties and so on, but that's where the level of priorities kick in, and maybe some of these things are on the lower end of the scale, and we can just give them to somebody else, or just stop doing them, or somehow improve it so we don't have to spend as much time with it.
Sounds very good. Well, in the show notes, everybody, I have some links to the gentleman that Candace has been referring to. Excuse me. I was watching a YouTube video this morning that I think is quite interesting. I'm going to go back and finish listening to it. but I'll put that link in the show notes and let us know what you're all thinking.
Well, thank you, Karen.
Have a great day. Have a great Labor Day.
You
Talk
too.
to you soon. Bye-bye now.